Happy Feast Day. Today is a very special feast for parishioners of St. Thomas More Parish. It's our patronal feast day. That means it's the feast day of the saint whom our parish is named after, and that's St. Thomas More. So St. Thomas More, as our patron saint, is praying especially hard for those of us who are parishioners here. He's not only the patron saint of our parish and many parishes, he's also the patron saint of many universities that are named after him. He's the patron saint of lawyers and statesmen. For St. Thomas More was also a very famous lawyer in his time, and he was a statesman. He was the Lord High Chancellor to King Henry VIII back in the 1500s, which is second in command and authority only to the king, with whom he was a great friend. When you walk into our church, the first thing you notice in the pediment window of the foyer is indeed the portrait of St. Thomas More. He's standing there holding a document in his hand. He has a chain with a medallion, and at his feet is an axe, and to his right and to his left are two other men. When you look at the image of St. Thomas More, you'll see that he and the other two men are holding palm branches. Anytime you see a saint holding a palm branch, that's the sign that they died a martyr's death. And by that we mean that rather than compromise their Catholic faith, they were put to death by people who were in opposition to our faith, who were against the Catholic Church. Thomas More was asked to publicly say he believed in something that he didn't. He was asked to publicly state that somebody else was head of the Church in England rather than the Pope. And rather than compromise his belief in that truth, he went to prison. He lost his job. He lost his fortune. And eventually he lost his head. King Henry VIII sentenced Thomas More to death by beheading in London Tower because he would not announce the King of England as the head of the Church, when in fact it was always and will always be the Pope. Also, when you look at the image of St. Thomas More, as I said, you see a chain around his hands and a medallion. That was the sign of his high office, that he was the Lord High Chancellor in the Kingdom of England. He's holding a document. St. Thomas More was a great scholar, and he wrote many, many books that are still read today at universities, and that is the Latin for Utopia, one of his famous books about how a society should run and govern itself so that people were respected with equal dignity and equal justice under the law, and that the laws made everybody take the responsibility to work together to build up the common good so that everybody could prosper within the community and with the kingdom. Perhaps the most interesting thing you'll see is by his feet is an axe. And very often, when you see a martyr, you also see the instrument by which they lost their life for the faith. And as I mentioned in St. Thomas More's case, he was beheaded by an axeman. To his right and to his left are St. Edmund Campion and St. John Fisher. St. John Fisher, to Thomas More's left, was also beheaded because he refused to recognize the King of England as the head of the Church. He was the Bishop of Rochester in England, and you see the axe next to his feet as well. And then to St. Thomas More's right is St. Edmund Campion, another man who insisted that the Catholic Church was the true church. He was a professor at Oxford, a very bright man, who came to England to be a priest and to hear confessions and say Mass at times when it was against the law to be a Catholic priest. And when the Queen discovered that he was a Catholic priest celebrating Masses, he was hung, and that's why you see him carrying a noose. And to the far end of the painting, to the far right of Edmund Campion, and to the far left of John Fisher, are the words, "King's good servant, but God's first." Those are, in fact, the very last words St. Thomas More said before he died for the faith. He said to his friend, the king, who had condemned him to death, "I die the king's good servant, but God's first." We can never be anyone's good friend. We can never be anyone's good servant if we are, in fact, God's friend first, if we are God's servant first. For when we are God's friend, and we are a servant of God, we are always doing good for others. John Fisher and Thomas More's feast day was this past week, June the 22nd, although Thomas More was actually beheaded on July the 6th. John Fisher was beheaded on June the 22nd, and we celebrate their feast day together. The most important thing, I think, as we celebrate this feast day is every time you come to our church, as you went to the front door, you'll find at the base of the stairs a beautiful bronze statue of Sir, now St. Thomas More. And when you walk in the front door, the first thing you see in the pediment above the entrance is the painting of St. Thomas More, his companion, St. Bishop John Fisher, and Edmund Campion, to remind all of us to be very strong in our faith. It's not always easy to do the right and the good thing, to stand by our conscience, but it's what we must do if we hope one day to get to heaven. And also to be reminded that St. Thomas More, our patron, is always praying for me and for you in a very special way. Happy feast day.